make me smile, I'd be sitting here and smiling for a while. Although I know I make you cry sometimes, your happiness is ever on my mind. I cannot repay for everything you've done, but my love for you burns brighter than the sun. No matter where my feet and mind may go, my heart will lead to you and you alone. Guyana, Guyana, I'll be holding on to you forevermore. Guyana, Guyana, may the blessings of God never leave your shore. A paradise so wondrous to behold, a work of art, your heart is gleaming gold. They sail the waters, soar above the trees, to find the gem between the mountains and seas. Your children know we try though we may fall. We stand united now to heed your call. Our fathers fought the fights for liberty. Forever I'll defend Guyana free. Guyana, Guyana, I'll be holding on to you forevermore. Guyana, Guyana, may the blessings of God never leave your shore. Guyana, Guyana, I'll be holding on to you forevermore. Guyana, Guyana, may the blessings of God never leave your shore. Rise up for your land. Rise up, won't everybody stand? Rise up for your land. Rise up, won't everybody take a stand? Rise up for your land. Rise up, won't everybody stand? Rise up for your land. Oh, Guyana, Guyana, Look down through your window, no big city lights, just greenery. I don't know what you come for. Listen up, my dear, we're such a man free. Welcome to the land of many faces, not one, not two, but 6 different races. You know when the sun kisses your skin, you're in the right place. G-U-I-A-N-A, oh, that's my beautiful country. G-U-I-A-N-A, one people, one nation, one destiny. Don't stop for a minute. Come, let me take a walk with Brother Tiki. You'll see our landmarks and our monuments. They're so unique. The high brick structure, the lighthouse, the tallest wooden structure, cathedral, 176th Street, monuments, and the beautiful city hall. You know with the wind in your hair, you're in the right place. G-U-I-A-N-A, oh, that's my beautiful country. G-U-I-A-N-A, one people, one nation, one destiny. Look down from your window, no big city lights, just greenery. I don't know what you come for. Listen up, my dear, we're such a man free. Welcome to the land of many faces, not one, not two, but 6 different races. You know when the sun kisses your skin, you're in the right place. G-U-I-A-N-A, oh, that's my beautiful country. G-U-I-A-N-A, one people, one nation, one destiny.
This is Quincy Anderson. You know I love my country. There's no other country better than mine. Welcome to Guyana, land of 6 races, 6 different faces, and we all live in love. Guyana is a beautiful country, no other can compare. Got everything right here, so no other can compare. Guyana is made up of so many natural resources. We don't need no forces, cause we got enough resources. Let's talk about bauxite, gold, diamond, and rice. We got it right here. Guyana ain't going nowhere. We got enough oil too. One Guyana, I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. One Guyana, I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. Hey, hey, Guyana is nice, Guyana is fun, Guyana is clean, Guyana is green, Guyana got oil, Guyana got gold, Guyana got young and Guyana got old. I ain't talking no more. Guyana got things, we growing wings and developing things. The government real and that's a big deal. I'm singing from my heart, Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. One Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I Welcome to Guyana, land of 6 races, 6 different faces, and we all live in love. Guyana is a beautiful country, no other can compare. Got everything right here, so no other can compare. Guyana is made up of so many natural resources. We don't need no forces, cause we got enough resources. Let's talk about bauxite, gold, diamond, and rice. We got it right here. Guyana ain't going nowhere. We got enough oil to one Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I call home. One Guyana. I love Guyana. Guyana, my country, my home. The only place I...
Bire mazak wuro nogong. Moro wia kok manoro tijik ningai.
We are one Guyana, a place of peace, a place of love. We are one Guyana, it's paradise, it's our world. A place of love. We are one Guyana. It's paradise, it's our world.
Yeah, some of we born on the hills, some on the low coastal plains. Plenty rice and sugar cane. Same Guyanese blood in our vein. So make we burn out the hatred, time for erasing. Can't make that destroy. 6 races I share the same space in this 83,000 square miles.
We are one Guyana, a place of peace, a place of love. We are one Guyana, it's paradise, it's our world.
Brother is a brother, no matter which religion is you. Could a Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, Hindu. Sister is a sister, real and true. One big part of culture brew.
And all of we together could really make this dream come true. Of a brighter Guyana for me and you. Ocean to mountains, hear this tune. Take it cool.
We are one Guyana, a place of peace, a place of love. We are one Guyana, it's paradise, it's our world. My love runs deep like a beautiful rivers for Guyana. Oh, and when we stand as one, mighty like Mount Jurima, for Guyana, for Guyana. Our life would be beautiful, just like Guyana. She's blessed us with her own, just to embrace her. Say, one and alone can't love, so let's put our hands together. Give her a standing ovation, this great nation, a little gem of this world, yeah. A place of peace, a place of love. We are one Guyana, it's paradise, it's our world. We are one
across the Caribbean Sea. Mother, father picked me, and we settled down in GT. Why oh? We been down on the coastal plain, in the hot sun of pouring rain, planting the rice and cane. Why oh? Yes, we take off we boots and we put on we roots. Why oh? So the crab that grow in the SC Crepo is we own. And the 6 o'clock bee and the Saki Winky is we own. And the lava that run from go by your gun is we own. And them all of our posts on the quarantine coast is we own. Wondering crab is we own. True leafing up is we own. Umanayana is we own. Fried Corilla is we own. Arapaima is we own. Umanayana is we own. Whether Grover, whether Pleasance, we do Pagua and Confidence, and we know how to wine and prance. Why oh? And we celebrate Diwali, and then time for Mashramani. It's party, party, party. Why oh? Yes, we know how to fet till the underwear wet. Why oh? So the crap out that grow in the SC Crebo is we own. And the 6 o'clock bee and the Saki Winky is we own. And the lava that run from go by your gun is we own. And them all of our posts on the quarantine coast is we own. Wondering crab is we own. Truly the nab is we own. Umanayana is we own. Bright Corilla is we own. Arapaima is we own. Umanayana is we own.
If I think about the ways you make me smile, I'd be sitting here and smiling for a while. Although I know I make you cry sometimes, your happiness is ever on my mind. I cannot repay for everything you've done, but my love for you burns brighter than the sun. No matter where my feet and mind may go, my heart will lead to you and you alone. Guyana, I'll be holding on to you forevermore. Guyana, may the blessings of God never leave your shore. A paradise so wondrous to behold, a work of art, your heart is gleaming gold. They sail the waters, soar above the trees, to find the gem between the mountain and seas. Your children know we try though we may fall. We stand united now to heed your call. Our fathers fought the fights for liberty. Forever I'll defend Guyana free. Guyana, Guyana, I'll be holding on to you forevermore. Guyana, Guyana, may the blessings of God never leave your shore. Guyana, Guyana, I'll be holding on to you forevermore. Guyana, Guyana, may the blessings of God never leave your shore. Rise up for your land. Rise up, won't everybody stand? Rise up for your land. Rise up, won't everybody take a stand? Rise up for your land. Rise up, won't everybody stand? Rise up for your land. Oh, Guyana, Guyana, I'll be holding on to you forever. I'll be holding on to you, Guyana, Guyana. May the blessings of God never leave your shore. Guyana, Guyana, I'll be holding on to you forevermore. Guyana, Guyana, may the blessings of God never leave your shore.
in the United States of America. With the Guyanese community there. But before he left Guyana, he went to the Essequibo Coast and is dispossessed by the PPP and they're being discriminated against. And it's very hard for Afro-Guyanese to start. It was near impossible under the APNU government that we just had to get rid of, because they sucked the life out of not just large businesses across Guyana. And you talk to the major producers and they will tell you this, but in which almost every sector of the economy saw a decline. And I'm speaking about the also made it very for small business to operate, from increasing registration fees, licensing permits, putting taxes on a number of things that small business of necessity have to utilize in advancing their business venture. For example, water and electricity and data and everything else were subjected to taxation that we had to remove the value-added tax. I've always given one example. When to vend from a vehicle, the license used to be $12,500 per annum under the PPP. It went to $65,000 per annum under APNU. And that's the magnitude of the increase for licenses across the board. So I saw them recently. They don't even know what they did in government. And Annette Ferguson asked that we present to Parliament because we say over 200 taxes and fees were increased. And she asked that we present the details there. At the last count I did, it's over 300. It's not even 200. We were shortchanging ourselves by saying 200 taxes and fees were increased in that period. It was very difficult for small business. Money in circulation just dried up. If you talk to people, taxi drivers, almost everyone, and it was very difficult. So he spread this rhetoric, and I wonder what he's going to really say to the people in Queens, because he's going to carry a very different rhetoric there. But I hope he would tell them about how he plans to save $200 billion per annum from cutting corruption, because that's what he said at his press conference. You can save $200 billion per annum by cutting corruption. So I hope that he will tell the people there that. And I hope that he will tell them that the Dutch disease and inflation don't matter in managing an economy, which he recently said. And I hope he would defend or criticize Amanza Walton for saying that Indo-Guyanese are mentally lazy, because the Richmond Hill community is mainly Indo-Guyanese. So I wish him well, but this is what we come to expect. And since I'm talking about the US, so I saw Rickford Burke today posted that someone was trying to dissuade people from going to the meeting. People don't want to go to listen to Norton in Guyana in his support base. Why would anyone in that area even want to attend a meeting with him? So we're not dissuading people. But the comment that I made last week about Rickford Burke and how he's committing a serious criminal act in the United States of America by engaging in lobbying activities without being registered under FARA. It is a jailable offense, not just a fine. And I hope that Guyanese will write the Justice Department, wherever you are, here in Guyana or you live in the US will write the Justice Department pointing this out, that here is a conman who is wanted in Guyana for extortion, who is engaged in illegalities in the United States of America, and the illegalities are all geared towards raising funds. So you would have heard a lot about this conference last week. He said, I'm trying to intimidate the congressmen and people from the administration not to attend this diaspora conference. But we don't have those powers to intimidate anyone. But I think what he's worried about is being exposed, because he's profiteering from doing this. These conferences are his way of making money. And I have the proof here. So everyone would have thought that this was an altruistic kind of activity that will be put together for the purpose of engaging the attention of US policymakers and bringing the facts to them, even facts about Afro-Guyanese the state of the affairs here in Guyana. But it's not so. Rickford Burke now sends out all these breaking news about who's going to attend. And so he lists everyone, people from White House, and State Department, and every department of the government, and the senators and congressmen. And then quietly he sends out a letter to say, you have to pay $100 to come to this conference. And he's been saying, and he would sterilize who will come to the conference. So some people could be rejected. So I guess the inconvenient ones will be rejected. And then quietly he's been saying to people, you have to pay more if you want your picture taken with a congressman. You'd have to pay $1,000 if you want to get to meet the congressman, etc. But not paid to anyone else, but paid to him and his organization. It is a con. It's a con job. This is what he does in the United States of America. He lives by conning people. And as we've seen here, extortionists too. So I want people, they like to report. He said after my last press conference, he reported me to the police in New York that I threatened him and will send army people to harm him. Nobody wants to harm this clown. But now I hope that Guyanese will all report him to the FBI and to the State Department and to the Justice Department for the illegalities he's been committed. And especially those who live abroad, you should write the U.S. government about this. This conference, it has nothing to do with Afro-Guyanese. It's all about, it's a Rickford Burke money-making venture. Now, in the last few days, we have seen quite a bit of activities surrounding some statements that emerged from the parliament and from the opposition. The People's Progressive Party has given an extension to ExxonMobil for their prospecting of 1 year for the life of their prospecting license that was issued in 2016. So this warranted a front page comment from the Kaichor News. PPP Civics dealings favor ExxonMobil over Guyana. And I don't want to read it to you, but it concludes, and this is what it's all about, a vilification of the PPP for giving this extension, saying we sold out the country, we're in the pocket of Exxon, that it's basically criminal, and it's an indictment of the party and the government. We saw several other articles in many publications about the same matter. Now, as you have seen from the statement that was issued by the Ministry of Natural Resources, it was former President Granger who gave this extension. Nobody questioned until today, why did he have to do this 8 days before President Ali was sworn in and almost 5 months after he had lost the elections? What was the urgency of doing this 8 days before the swearing in of President Ali? Where was the urgency? Because the 1-year extension would only affect the prospecting license when the second renewal period comes up and they have to relinquish 20% of the block. So there was no urgency. Could have been done later. There was no immediacy in the issue. Yet he did it. His biggest priority when this country was struggling to maintain its democratic license. Fact remains is that the AFC APNU government gave, rather than going quiet, this AFC put out a press release. And this is what they said. But even if the APNU AFC did indeed give Exxon a 1-year extension for COVID-related activities, and they did, why is it now necessary for the PPP to also grant an additional extension for the same reasons, 3 years after the pandemic? Now, we assume that people, when they hold certain positions in government, and especially ministerial role, would read things and understand. But here is it, an entire political party doesn't understand what a high school student would read and understand. There is no second second extension. The PPP did not give an additional 1-year extension. The extension of 1 year that Granger gave had consequences in that it shifted the provisions of the prospecting license by 1 year forward. So 2019 was the first renewal period. 2023 was the second renewal period when they had to give up 20% of the block. But because they had the 1 year extension on the prospecting license, the renewal period, the second renewal period, got shifted to 2024. So they saw that it's a shift. Now the renewal period, the second renewal period, was shifted to 2024. So they think it's a different extension. They don't understand that it is the extension that they got in 2020 from Granger that had this consequence. And anybody would understand this. I was tempted to draw here a tiny graph and show Ramjatan, send it over to him. And then he follows, the press release says, the approach of the coalition contrasts with the lay down and take all you want attitude of the PPP. In the same statement that they gave the extension for, where there was no urgency at that time, they then said, oh, this is PPP laying down, and Exxon could do whatever they want with them. This is the same party that signed the 2016 agreement and gave the extension. So now, they're still, I can go on. I just want to, at some point in time, I'll do that to show how stupid they are and the arguments are they made from all their leaders. I have all of it. They can't even understand what they did. They don't understand what they did. So now suddenly, and then they got the TIGI guy, he got involved too, blaming the PPP for it. Everybody blaming the PPP for it. So what has happened now, effectively, is that the extension, they now shifted it to, the quarterly information that you're supposed to get. The extension was given from March to March 2020 to March 2021. And Exxon brought in information. They gave a full report to the ministry as to how their original plan was affected. From 6 rigs down to 4. They could not mobilize 2 of the rigs. They had one of the 4 had to be basically decommissioned or activities. They couldn't continue activities on one of the existing 4. So they demonstrated how COVID affected. The PPP did not give an extension beyond what Granger did. We didn't give any extension beyond what Granger did. It's the Granger's extension that has caused the relinquishment of the 20% to shift from 2023 to 2024. It's as simple as that. There is no second extension. Look. This is it. 3 places they mention in their press release that, okay, we gave 1 extension, but why did the PPP have to give a second one in 2023? There's no second extension. We're living with the consequences of their extension. And so I hope that all of the people who are vilifying the PPP. Of course, you wouldn't expect Kaichor News to do anything of that sort. There was an apology. There was an apology. Because this is, anyhow, let's move on from that. The next point I want to make, so it is, let me go straight to this one. I'm talking about Kaichor News. Last week, they asked me if the $5 million remaining from the GT&T sale of shares, whether that was paid. And I said, I'm sure it was paid, but I have to verify it. So the headline says, government unsure if Chinese company paid off the $5 million owed to GT&T shares. It sold 10 years ago. We're unsure. I said, I'm sure, but we'll verify. Now, this is like asking people, do you know Glenn Lal killed someone and was never charged for it at Agricolor? Do you know, I'm asking the reporters, and do you know he was involved in backtracking? And if you say no, then I'd say Kaichor News reporters are unsure whether Glenn Lal is a killer. That is the analogy, because you're unsure. Of course, you would probably have to get time to check it out if it's true. But if I put a headline like that, Kaichor News reporters unsure whether Glenn Lal is a killer or a backtracker, then that would be fair reporting too. So the facts are, as I said last week, once again, that when we went out to tender in 2010, it was a public tender, all the newspapers. The highest, we got a single bid in for those 20% shares for $7 million from Rudisa, a subsidiary of Rudisa. That is the Surinamese company. $7 million. We ended up selling the shares for $30 million. And I'm telling you this because I'm coming back to the Marriott in a moment. So we sold the share for $30 million. The public tender had one bid, $7 million, although we extended the bid. And $5 million was supposed to be paid. The facts are now that all $30 million has been paid, and because of the court decision, another $2.2 million, so $32.2 million have been paid so far, because the 2.2 is in interest, and they still have to pay some additional interest, several millions dollars more. So it has been fully paid, the entire sale sum, and we have received now interest on some of the outstanding money. That's a fact. And the reason I wanted to talk a bit about that is because, again, the Marriott, a similar situation with Marriott. They have a new thing now called Blunt. So today, this was Marriott hotel sale in the Kaichor News. This is a full page that they use Blunt. So I'm going to read it to the people of this country. The selling of Guyana continues under the PPP government. Bharrat Jagdeo, the sale of the Marriott Hotel is in its final stages. Guyanese know little of the hotel's arrival and its life. But now, thanks to Jagdeo, we are here of its sale almost completed. This is how prize assets are passed from hand to hand under the PPP. This is the business he touts, but conceals in secrecy. Guyana's rich assets have become toys in Jagdeo's hands. Now, we went through a public tender for the sale. This is the same Glenn Lal who'd been saying that he knows about some phantom investors who own the Marriott. A total lie. Couldn't prove a single one. He came to a press conference. I said, I'd leave this job if he could find a single phantom investor or owner. So he was exposed there. Secondly, we went to public tender. We got two bids, $55 million and $65 million. He said we should sell it for $55 million because that's the better of the, in an editorial, because that's the Guyanese. We went out back to tender again, and this is all in the public domain at these press conferences. You hear, we now have a bid for $90 million. I said to people, we're wrapping up this bid because you have to get the transactional documents, you have to get the investor who has to do due diligence, all of that before the agreement is finalized. Every step of the way, we inform the public. If you go back to all my press conferences, he says this is secret. Now, the man who was advocating, first of all, was saying it's a white elephant, then saying we should sell it for $55 million. We're selling it for $90 million now, and it is giving away the assets of the country. But this is in today's paper. So this is what we have passing off as journalism. And every single day, it's the same. So I'm not going to go through the other blunts. Every day, apparently, there is one. But I just wanted to say that about these two. I noticed on the oil refinery, Starbuck did an editorial on the 21st and then made a great suggestion about the refinery, that we should not think about it, that I defended the refinery the last time, and that we should contemplate looking at the creation of strategic reserves. But I recall that is what I spoke of last week. But now suddenly an editorial on August 21st, Monday of this week, who said, even so, if Mr. Jagdeo and his government are so worried about supply chain disruptions, perhaps they could begin looking at other possibilities that could be free of the toxicities inherent in a refinery. For example, they consider the creation of a strategic reserve. Last week, that's what I said we're considering. And now suddenly the editorial says we're so narrow-minded that we now need to consider what I suggested that we are doing already last week. And sometimes I do wonder whether these things. Let me just say that I know there are lots of questions today because people have been calling me a lot. And so I'm going to give you a chance to deal with that. But just to come back to this core point, that the Kaichor News and Glenn Lal has made ignorance of virtue. You know, we should tell our children, his message, stop going to school. Because if you cannot go to school and be a specialist on everything as Glenn Lal is, then what's the need to go to school and have this profound understanding of everything? And so it's utter nonsense. And that's why there are lots of things that were written there, and I'm not going to even pay attention to them because they're repetitive. I spoke with some of my colleagues from abroad, economists, etc., and they say to me, why bother with this stupid thing? Nobody pays attention. Nobody with any sense reading 3 articles there, they would understand the 3 articles get repeated in different fashion all the time, and nobody pays attention to it. I guess some, but in Guyana's context, we have to continue doing this. I'm going to end here. I'm going to end early today and give you a chance to ask all the questions that you want. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, you got a microphone there? It's working? Why you laughing? This girl is a wicked something. what are you laughing? Huh? You afraid of the mic?
Good afternoon, Kimal King Oil Now. I wanted to ask you about the Kanuku block offshore Guyana. Tullow Oil has decided to sell out its stake in the Oranduke block. And having made that decision to exit there, there's been no news on what's of its stake in the Kanuku block. Because
we have not. The last 2 days ago, I spoke with Vikram Bharrat, and at that time we had not received notification. And they need to notify us because the approval has to be done by the government of Guyana. So up to that point in time, we had not been notified about this. We've been hearing about it, the grapevine, but that has to come through, as we said before, a formal process to us.
Decision to leave the Oranduke block. That's what you didn't hear about?
Yeah.
Okay. There is also, with respect to the Kanuku block, from my analysis of their contract, their time with the block should have come to an end already. So I wanted to know if the government gave an extension to the holders of the Kanuku block, Repsol and Tullow and so on.
No, there's been no extension. No extension. So if the time, what do you mean the time has come to an end?
So each of the PSAs, you get about 10 years, split into about 3 phases.
Yes.
Early studies, and then first phase, second phase.
So the GGMC showed us a timetable. And so that's why I'm saying with the first renewal period and then the second renewal period during relinquishment, and then the giving up of the entire block after a particular period. So outside of CGX, none of those that we saw at that time from the timetable they gave us would have reached a period when they had to, the entire prospecting license would have been exhausted or expired. So I need to verify that from GGMC because they track that.
Okay.
Marcel Thomas from the Starbuck News. I have 2 questions, and both one is on a letter from, both are letters. One is from written by the brother of Sash Saw, Roger.
No, brother, son.
It's a son.
Son, yeah, Roger.
Oh, on behalf of the family, and
yes.
I guess you would have read that letter.
Yeah, I saw the letter.
Basically that your take to the grave comments disregard Justice for
Yeah,
persons who
sure.
were killed during the period. My questions on that are one, that when you mentioned that there were persons in the army that whose names you couldn't say, does that mean that they were involved in this whole crime spree process in terms of being participants in that? That's one. And two, does the information relate to people who were colluding with criminals? And it goes over again. Are those persons um, in government or in the military, or were in government, were in the military? And overall, what are you,
I, yeah,
what are
I'm
you,
not getting you. Yes,
yeah,
anyhow,
you
I can get the gist of what you're trying to say.
basically
So
is,
let me,
do you have information, you have information, or do you have
right.
information
So
on
let me,
persons who were involved during that period, that were in the military or in government at that time? And should they now not be court-martialed or prosecuted? And you're holding on to this information is like you also being,
yes. So let me go through, yes. So the first question. So I can understand the family. They had this traumatic event. The country suffered this huge trauma. Sasha was a member of our party. And so it was a loss for everyone, the family, the party, the country. There are lots, in that period, people talk about a crime spree. But what we were dealing with was an insurgency. An insurgency. It wasn't an ordinary crime spree. You, if you read, first of all, you have to situate yourself in the era and the context of what happened. Now they may have a different view, but if you read UC Kwayana and many of the others, they will tell you about the atmosphere in Buxton when these 5 persons escaped, that the community was subjugated. The community was under siege. That many political operatives, and we have been in the public domain, we spoke about this hundreds of times before, have gone to the community. Raphael Trotman did, Hoy did, a number of individuals did, speaking to people there. They, and so the political cover was given to these 5 persons. They were called freedom fighters. They appeared on television holding a gun and saying they were fighting for freedom. The people who ended up committing the massacres on children and everyone else, and who were subjugating Buxton. That was the era, the political cover. You remember Channel 9, and every day you had a running commentary about these people were freedom fighters. That is how they were characterized in that period, the insurgents. So their task, they were criminals. I don't believe they had any intense loyalty to anyone. So they killed conveniently when they felt threatened. But many people thought from the politics at that time that they were creating enough turmoil in the country to dislodge the PPP. And that was the idea. So a lot of things happened in that period. In the leadership of the army and the police, we were duped in many times, duped, or they believed that we were duped, that we did not know, not we were duped, they believed that. And I spoke of it at Roger's funeral. where all of the reports were sterilized. We had people in the community of Buxton who were totally dissatisfied with what was happening in that community. The community lost almost all business activities. People left there, the middle class left. Many people didn't have an option. Many girls in the community were raped because of the political cover that these guys got. And they showed us, we had video footages of all that was taking place. Many of those people today are still alive. Many of them live in those communities. Many of the soldiers who helped to expose the sterilized versions of the documents that came to us, they're still there. Those people need to be protected. They still need to be protected. They put their lives at risk to give us information that ultimately led to either the arrest of these people, or them in engagements with the security forces, they were killed. A lot of those people are still in the system, people who place themselves at personal risk. Now, it had nothing to do with their information on Sasso. That matter, you would recall, the police closed the files. CLL said their file is closed. They charged two persons. I think one was Skinny and one Biscuit. The two, I don't remember their right names. But these two persons were charged. The police had evidence that they were involved in that. So people were charged. And there was a call for an inquiry, commission of inquiry, but if they've identified the killers, there may be others too, but a lot of people got killed in that period from that gap. And so it had nothing to do with Sasso and the Sasso affairs. Even up to recently, I think the family got a chance to see the police files. And it might be very painful to the family too. Just recently. But what I said there had nothing to do with that matter, because that issue was, we had people who were charged for those crimes, that we are convinced based on the police investigation that they're the ones who did that. So there are lots of people who we still need to protect in the system, people who put their lives at risk. Now, if you recall, Granger said he will do a COI, and then he ended up only doing the COI for Lindo Creek, because in Lindo Creek, a few people accused the security forces of committing the crime, like killing people, which was false, but he wanted almost to prove that the security forces were involved in criminal activities at every single stage. You recall the infamous statement from Basil Williams to Felix, saying when the massacre took place at Agricola, that you helped us. You help us by diverting attention. Right? A lot of that is known already. But for APNU to come at this stage on when Roger had passed away, and then in a statement, blame him for what took place at Buxton. That is what they did in their statement that they issued after his passing. That is why it warranted saying something about it. So yeah, we can do the
Following
follow-up
up,
on that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and following up though, when you said about the persons, the top tier that would have sterilized the information, uh, aren't they committing acts of obstruction of justice, and
most
shouldn't they face some kind of?
they're all out now. They're all out. Their whole leadership. You recall that we had to make some almost the top 4 persons or 5 persons in the army had to make way for a new chief of staff when I was president. They were they had no role again in the command structure, and that's when we started making progress by replacing people.
My other question was, oh, I should ask though, with the same take to the grave, would you revisit that at any point?
Which
The stuff that you'll take to the grave, since would you revisit
okay.
sharing it?
Maybe as because there are lots of people you still need to protect, and maybe as time goes on, things will happen.
This one is from former Minister of Natural Resources, Raphael Trotman. It's in today's too. And he says, basically your claim about the criminality of the contract with Exxon gives you the perfect opening to void the 2016 contract
No.
and take Exxon back to the table, because any contract formed in any criminal
Yeah.
machinations, whatever, can't be taken. So you can't say that it's
Yes, I
sanctity of contract.
read the letter. So now my thing is that again, Trotman should be. I don't want to be, because Trotman is a bit ill, and I don't want to say all the things that really I should say. But what I said basically, it was criminal negligence. That's what I was getting at on his part, because of what he did when he had advice to the contrary. He rushed off and signed the contract when he should have exercised greater diligence. So it's criminal on his part because of the negligence. He breached all the fiduciary trust. It almost like malfeasance in public office when you breach fiduciary trust that we place in someone's hand, and you just callously on a complex contract of this nature, you just we were told that he had advice to the contrary, that he just rushed off and concluded it. That was what I said. But he did not represent us. That's what I'm saying. He acted criminally. We haven't been able to prove that he has benefited personally. But if that could be proven by anyone, then there might be a different case. But I was speaking about his criminal negligence. That's what I was speaking about, clear. And I saw he went on, who haven't forgiven him for some encounter in Parliament that we had. Only God forgives people. He should seek forgiveness from the maker. Now, my thing is that it's never personal. So if Trotman is listening, I may not get a chance to say this thing. For me, my politics is not personal. It's so if he believes that I hold ill will because of some speech that he made in Parliament that I don't even remember, that he's wrong. For me, it's all about the politics, not personal. And so you can rest assured I don't have any ill will to him, but personally. But he acted in a criminally negligent manner.
Dr. Jagdeo, on the same letter, given all that you would have said over the years about Trotman's criminal negligence as you described it, would the government be open to launching a full-fledged investigation to understand what were the motivations behind such criminal negligence and to understand why would a cabinet give, the former cabinet give its blessings for the criminal negligence that you would have described over the years?
Yeah. I don't know if evidence, if Culture News can come up with some evidence that show that it warrants such an investigation. We don't have any evidence now, but then I'm sure everyone would want to do that.
On the matter of the relinquishment, the opposition, in its letter, in its statement that you have, it called for the release of evidence to show that the government did do its due diligence, starting with the September 2020 quarterly review.
Yeah.
How would you respond
Yeah, but
to that?
the thing is that it is a diversion. They got caught with their pants down. They got caught with their pants down. They said, "Oh, you guys gave an extension," and then then suddenly it came out that they gave the extension. So they got caught with their pants down. Instead of gracefully accepting that and killing the issue, they then said they then dug a deeper hole for themselves by saying, "Oh, we gave that, but why did you have to give one in 2023 after COVID, another extension for 1 year?" Which was nonsense. There was no second extension. When that was exposed, they went back, "Oh, you're supposed to assess it." Well, we did. We did, but we're not going to give, we don't have to give evidence to AFC or anyone, the AFC. We did. I just told you about some of the elements of it to show that it did affect them. And we didn't go, although COVID extended, we came out of COVID till 2022 nearly. We did not go beyond the 1 year, March 2021. So we did not extend that period, although COVID lasted longer than the 1 year period, because we believe that they made, in that period, they made some adjustments beyond the last year of the COVID. But in the period between, for the 1 year, there was a work program, and the work program could not be completed because they had real difficulties mobilizing the rigs, 2 of the rigs that should have been working in that year.
Just 2 other questions, Dr. Jagdeo. Last week when you spoke about the refinery matter at the previous
Yes.
press conference, I wasn't exactly clear about the comment you made about the capacity. Did you say, and you can confirm for me, that 1 refinery would be needed at this point in time, or government would consider 1 refinery given our capacity, and another is possible if we get to that 1.2?
No. I said that the way we see it, that will be only 1 refinery if we go down that route. We explore the market, and through a request for proposal. I said that's one. We got about 11 submissions there. Then we had about another 5 or so came in unsolicited. That whatever happens, if we assess all of these, there could only be one refinery, regardless of how many proposals we get. If we decide to go that route, because simultaneously we're exploring the concept of strategic reserves, and that we have to look at the two side by side to see if they can solve the same problem or concern that we have. And the concern is about energy security here in Guyana. So if, for example, the strategic reserves, and I went through it, if our oil is told abroad, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back through all of that. That's why I was shocked that the Stabrook editorial would say we should consider this when I actually dealt with it last week, Thursday, and I said, we are considering this. And that is as an alternative to a refinery. So we are looking at both side by side, which serves the country's interests best. But there will not be several refineries. Yes, yes.
Given the capacity. And on the oil blocks auction, has government decided on the firms yet that you would use to assist you with the evaluation of the bids?
Yeah, I think the same IHS market that has that worked with us on the preparation for the auction, the PSA, the Petroleum Activities Bill. They would be the firm that would help us to evaluate the offers. So we've uploaded on the ministry's page both versions of the PSA, for the deep water and shallow water. I think those are uploaded. I asked them. They were uploaded today. So that's, you can see that there, and then the law is all, will be sent to the bidders. So all have been sent to the bidders already, as promised.
Good afternoon, Trina Williams from Guyana Chronicle. Concerning the reopening of the Rose Hall estate, can you say what it means for the communities in Berbice? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you say what this reopening means for the communities in Berbice and how many persons will be? Or
I'm not hearing you. Yes, we need a proper microphone.
what?
The Rose Hall estate. Yeah.
And how many persons will be or were hired?
Oh, at Rose Hall, the last figure they gave me was about, I think about 1,300 or something, like 1,300 or 1,100, somewhere around that. Yes. And I think it was about 1,700, 1,700 that were terminated, somewhere around that level. So that's what you're asking? Oh, okay. Yes. So Berbice, as you know, sugar was the major economic activity in Berbice for the whole county. Sugar's income, or the sugar workers' income, was served as the driving force for the economy, the local economy, because the taxi drivers, the vendors in the stores, those who are selling in the market, almost everything depending on the sugar workers' income. When we had a massive withdrawal of that income, we saw economic activities and joblessness. Um, First, economic activities plunged and the joblessness rate skyrocketed in Berbice. People are losing hope. And so our strategy has been to put more disposable income back in the economy. Here in 3 and 4, these regional economies tend to operate on their own because they have a lot of economic activities and the disposable income. Not so like with Linden or Essequibo or Berbice. You have to almost, government spending has to help to bolster economic activities, private economic activities in these areas to keep um, them going. So re-employing the sugar workers is part of restoring not just the sugar belt or work jobs for sugar workers, but for the entire economy in Berbice. Whether you live in New Amsterdam, you have a store in New Amsterdam, or in Crabwood Creek, or anywhere else. So that was one of the ways that we started getting more income into that area. Secondly, the part-time job. The part-time job takes about maybe $2 billion into the economy in the region per annum. So, so suddenly you see a lot more economic activities taking place in those areas. So I guess the strategy is working and we're looking to diversify into other areas. But it means a lot to the sugar workers too. Many of them couldn't send their family to school. I saw, you should look back at some of the heart-wrenching videos that were done by people who lost their jobs, lost everything, couldn't send their kids to school and stuff like that. Just tough for them. And who did it callously.
Kurt Campbell, Newsroom. Just a question for clarity flowing from Kiana's question on the oil refinery. I'm just really trying to understand, with the fixation on one refinery, what it means for the agreement with the Dominican Republic against all of the private proposals that the government has received.
But that has to be assessed against every other proposal. No, exploration. It's not a done deal on the refinery, on the refinery aspect, and even the other elements of the, you saw the MOU. Even the other elements, it's all exploration. It's all exploration. Before we go to a full petrochemical industry, we are using gas. We have to have our gas strategy ready. We spoke of that already. I told you already, we're turning our attention to the gas strategy. So a lot of these are to explore opportunities, but we have not concluded anything because it always has to be competitive. And we're looking for the best deal for the country.
Taking you back to last week also, I wanted clarity on that deep water port. You had said that it isn't like the container
Yes,
deep water port. Are we looking at one of those though?
Yes, the costs are enormous. The locations are being examined. First, we look at New Amsterdam. We had several groups, Dubai Port, an Indian group, etc. The problem in New Amsterdam is the siltation from the river, where we're looking at the mouth of the river. That's where we're thinking about that. And the dredging costs are heavy. So we're still looking at options to do that. But for that port to be built, you have to have, because of the cost, you have to have a number of other infrastructure to go along with it, including a connection to Brazil. Because the stream of benefits now, given the level of our imports, would not be able to justify that kind of expenditure at this point in time. Therefore, you have to add a new stream of benefit. So when you're doing the feasibility study, then it comes out positively. And the stream of benefit could be trade from Brazil. Yes.
Davina Bagat with Culture News. Earlier, you said that you don't have to prove anything to the AFC on your relinquishment provision by releasing that document.
Yeah.
But are you open to making it public just to ease this tension that is ongoing?
But the document that we receive is we knew what the original schedule is, and we saw what the adjustment because of COVID. We know the difficulties. What I'm just told you about the key element of it. The key element of it is AFC said they know COVID never affected the company. So ask them, how do they know this? What was the original? I told you already, it was to have 6 drilling rigs. Now they could not mobilize 2 because of COVID. Couldn't get it. You ask them, how come they know it didn't affect? And they just talk off the top of their head. So I'm telling you, we saw evidence of how it was affected based on what they planned and how that had to be adjusted. But we did not go beyond the 1 year. Although COVID extended, the COVID measures extended up to 2022, we stuck with that 1 year extension that Granger had given, that was described in the document, March to March.
I know you responded earlier to an article, GT&T shares being paid off, and so on. But I raised a question too regarding Lisa 2 being paid off. Can you say whether you were able to confirm Exxon clearing those expenses?
Which expenses?
Confirm.
No, I'm not confirming that. I'm not confirming, and because we dealt with this all. If I gotta look, that is why you have to understand things too. I can't come and educate all the time. The thing is that there is, because of no ring fencing, several projects are being financed from the proceeds. So because several projects are being financed, it affects what would have been an early repayment, like had we ring fenced only around Lisa or 2 projects, we would have paid it off already and we would have been receiving 50% basically of the proceeds. So because of this, every time a new project comes along, it delays, and it's dynamic. It delays the repayment of all of these the expenditure. It delays it. It just shifts it forward. So that is why it's a dynamic thing. It's not like static, and that is what I'm hoping that people would understand. That in these like financial things, because of the lack of ring fencing in this case, in this particular case, it's difficult to assign. You say, oh, all of the money is gone there. Most of the money are going into financing the new projects now, coming from revenue.
From me, given the likely impact of our new status as a high-income country, we know it's likely to affect the interest rates on loans and so on.
Yes, what's it?
I was saying, given the likely impact of our new status as a high income earner, do you think does government see this as a positive title, given that it's likely to impact our interest rates on loans?
So what has happened? We will graduate out of concessional resources. When we were low, like a hippie country, we had very, very concessional resources from almost all the multilateral institutions. But progressively, that pool of concessional resource has been dwindling. And so now we would have to borrow from the ordinary capital resources, not special capital resources of these institutions. So, like IDA, we're out of IDA now. So, we have to borrow, if we want to borrow, from World Bank resources, not IDA resources anymore. Like at the IDB, they had funds for special operations and then the ordinary capital. One was concessional, the other one is market-based, based on the cost to the institution of raising the capital. They put on an admin fee and then they on lending. So we've just got our last set of loans on the concessional basis from the multilateral institutions. We only have two variable, as I mentioned, two variable interest loans in our entire debt portfolio, and both are to multilateral institutions. What we are finding now, though, is that they're borrowing from the ordinary capital of these institutions, which we'll have to do now. The interest rate sometimes, in most cases now, if we talk about the current situation, will be higher than borrowing from a private commercial bank and from bilateral donors. So with Saudi Arabia, we borrow through a bilateral arrangement. Our interest rate borrowing through bilateral arrangements are a fraction of what it would be if we had to borrow under the prevailing circumstances with a high income country from the World Bank, because it's variable and it's LIBOR based. And so that is something that we're looking at. So now what we do, we look at bilateral lines of credit, we look at the multilateral financial institutions, we look at private creditors, and then if we borrow, we then assess the conditions on each, the grace period, the maturity of the loan, the interest rates, and then you make a decision. You make a decision on that basis. And we're still getting, but from bilateral resources, we're still getting concessional loans. So for example, the East Coast Road that we borrowed from the Chinese to do the East Coast Road, that road, that would be from the Exim Bank of China, which is a low interest. If we borrow from like a commercial bank in China, like China Development Bank, the interest rates are high there. So but we're watching this carefully, every single loan. And as you've seen so far, our loans are a fraction of our capacity to borrow. We don't borrow easily. They have to go through a serious set of analyses, and they're mainly for capital projects. Contrast that with what the opposition leader said, that you need to borrow for social purpose, basically to eat, and we should borrow and give to people. We disagree with that totally.
Just turning back to the document signed by the former president. It appears that the revelation of these documents caught many of the members of the former administration by surprise. What is your take on the fact that the former president signed such a document so close to handing over the reins of office? And do you think he owes the country an explanation as to why this was such a priority and many of his members were unaware?
Yeah, they should ask him that. I don't generally disagree with the tenure, the letter. It could have been done the extension, because if COVID affected activities, and then you can demonstrate that, then that's fine. So I'm not going to run him down on the content of the letter, but you're right about the timing and the urgency. He didn't need to do that. A new government could have done it easily, and it could be done now, because it's actually could be done next year, because no, not next year, because this year is the relinquishment only. Could have been done now. There is no urgency whatsoever. And there are lots of things that sometimes we discover too, that you know, we're we're in the dark about the justification as to why that was done. So I guess they should ask him, his own party should ask him, rather than trying to stupidly defend something that is indefensible, because they just got caught with it. They made a big issue, and Glenn was all happy, 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 and then suddenly realized that it's Apnu who did it. Mm.
He's been waiting for 3 weeks now, and he cannot get to purchase the stocks because the bank told him that they can't get the currency, the US exchange for him. So will the government be willing to intervene now, at least to attempt to regulate the market before it gets worse?
Yeah. You know, again, you think that governments just make policies on the basis of one businessman tell you? You think a government make policy like that? A businessman tell you he can't get money and stuff like that. I explained last week that what happened is that almost every bank was clearing except in Republic Bank. That Republic Bank had more demand than they had currency. And now and some banks had way in a large sums of money, and they didn't have a wait list, and that there's no interbank market. So the market on the whole, when the central bank assesses a market, they have to look at real parameters, variables, not one businessman come and take a drink and tell you something. They got a central bank operates, they're charged with some responsibilities. And therefore, monetary policy is a serious thing. I know for Kaichonos it may nothing much, or for Norton. But they gotta look at whether the market is in equilibrium. They can't operate on the basis of individual. They operate on the of individual hearsay, on the basis of aggregates. Aggregates. That's what I call macroeconomics, on aggregates. And so they're saying, the central bank is saying to us, on the face of it, there is enough currency in the system. The market is balkanized, so I may not get currency at my bank because my bank has a wait list like Republic Bank or a particular area. But so once the equilibrium, the aggregate where aggregate demand outstrips aggregate supply of foreign currency to the market, the central bank and the government will intervene by selling currency into the system. Will intervene by doing that, by selling currency into the system. But we got to have that assessment done by the technical people. It's a technical issue. It can't be on the basis every week we come on the basis every week we